Rain drizzled steadily over the city, soft and silver, painting the streets in mirrors of light. The air smelled of damp asphalt and coffee from the nearby cafe. Evening traffic roared like an endless tide, but in the middle of all that rush, a tired woman and a little girl trudged slowly along the sidewalk, sharing one small umbrella between them. Grace Taylor's shoes squished with each step. She'd been on her feet since dawn, cleaning offices where no one even noticed her presence. Her jacket was worn thin, and the umbrella's ribs were bent, but she kept it angled carefully so the little one walking beside her wouldn't get wet. "Almost home, sweetheart," Grace said, forcing a smile as she adjusted the grocery bag clutched to her chest. Inside were only a few bread rolls, milk, and 2 eggs, their dinner for the night. Beside her, Lily, 7 years old, hummed softly. She had a pink ribbon in her messy hair, and her small hand clung tightly to her mother's. "It's okay, Mom. You work hard every day. We'll have soup and bread. It's my favorite." Grace's heart ached at the innocence in that voice. The child never complained, even though she knew her mother sometimes went to bed hungry so she could eat. They stopped at a small park to rest. The benches glistened with rainwater. The trees swayed gently. Grace set the grocery bag down and sighed, stretching her aching back. "Stay here, Lily. I'll buy us 2 hot buns from that stall across the street. Don't move, okay?" Lily nodded obediently, swinging her legs as she watched the puddles shimmer. The city felt quieter here, tucked away from the honking cars. Lily traced shapes with her shoes on the wet ground. Then something dark caught her eye, a small leather wallet lying under the bench. Curious, she bent down and picked it up. It was thick, made of smooth brown leather with gold initials embossed on the front. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside were stacks of crisp $100 bills, several credit cards, and a sleek ID card. Her eyes widened as she read the name. Daniel Reed, CEO, Reed Enterprises. Even Lily recognized the name. His company's tall glass building stood like a giant in downtown. She passed it every morning on the bus to school, staring up at it in awe. Her heart beat fast. She'd never seen so much money. It could buy her a new backpack, school shoes, even pay their rent. But then, like a whisper, her mother's voice echoed in her head, words she'd heard 100 times. "We never keep what isn't ours, no matter how poor we are. What isn't ours never brings happiness, Lily." She looked at the wallet again, then gently closed it and held it to her chest. When Grace returned, cheeks pink from the cold, Lily pointed at the wallet with wide eyes. "Mom, look, someone dropped this. It has money and cards and a man's name inside." Grace froze. Her first instinct was shock. The wallet looked expensive, probably worth more than her month's salary. She opened it carefully, her hands trembling as she saw the thick bundle of bills. A pang of temptation flickered in her mind. Rent was due tomorrow. The landlord had already threatened them twice. A few bills could fix everything, just for now. Then she looked down at Lily. The little girl's gaze was steady, honest, expectant. "Mom, we should find him, right? The man who lost it." Grace took a slow breath. The thought of her daughter's disappointment, if she did the wrong thing, hurt more than hunger ever could. She smiled faintly and nodded. "You're right, sweetheart. We'll return it. It's not ours. Even if he's rich?" Lily asked. Grace brushed her hair back gently. "Especially if he's rich. Maybe he's not used to people doing the right thing anymore. Let's show him there are still good hearts in this world." Lily grinned proudly. "You always say that, Mom." Grace chuckled softly, standing up and slipping the wallet into her bag. "Let's go home before the rain gets worse." They walked back down the narrow street, sharing their little umbrella, unaware that this simple act of honesty was about to change their lives in ways neither could imagine. Later that night, as the wind howled through the cracks of their old apartment, Grace placed the wallet on the table beside their modest dinner. She stared at it while Lily ate happily, swinging her feet. "Should we call him now?" Lily asked between bites. Grace hesitated, picking up the business card. "We'll call him first thing in the morning. It's late now. Maybe he's already looking for it." Lily nodded. "He'll be happy we found it." Grace smiled faintly. "Yes, maybe he will." But deep down, she wasn't sure. In her experience, the rich weren't always kind. She'd cleaned too many offices, heard too many harsh voices barking at employees, seen too many polished shoes step over janitors like they were invisible. Still, she was determined to do what was right. That night, as she tucked Lily into bed, the child whispered drowsily, "Mom, you're the best person I know." Grace's throat tightened. She brushed a strand of hair from Lily's forehead and whispered back, "And you're my reason to stay that way." When a room grew quiet, Grace sat at the table again, staring at the wallet. For a fleeting second, she wondered what kind of man its owner was. Daniel Reed, CEO, probably powerful, probably cold, probably someone who wouldn't even remember their faces. But it didn't matter. Grace picked up the wallet and whispered into the silence, "Tomorrow, you'll be home." Outside, the rain finally stopped. The moonlight slipped through the clouds, falling across the small apartment where a mother and daughter, poor but proud, slept peacefully, never realizing that their honesty would soon reach the heart of the man who'd forgotten what goodness looked like. The next morning dawned gray and wind-swept over the city skyline. Inside the top floor of Reed Enterprises, the world looked very different from Grace and Lily's tiny apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the sprawling city, glass and steel glittering like wealth itself. Behind a massive oak desk sat Daniel Reed, a man who looked as sharp as the lines of his tailored charcoal suit. Every inch of his office screamed precision. Not a paper out of place, not a single picture frame crooked. But the man inside, it was far from calm. "Ellen," Daniel barked, voice echoing off the marble. "Did you find it?" His assistant, a middle-aged woman with calm eyes, flinched slightly. "Not yet, sir. We retraced your steps, called the restaurant, checked your car. It has my access cards, IDs, everything," Daniel snapped, pacing near the window. "Do you know what kind of security risk that is?" "Yes, sir," Ellen said softly. "We're on it." Daniel pinched the bridge of his nose, exhaling sharply. He hated losing control. His entire life was built around order, efficiency, and absolute discipline. That wallet represented not just his money, but control, and control was everything. He muttered, almost to himself, "People these days leave something lying around and it's gone. No one returns anything anymore." Ellen hesitated. "Maybe someone honest will, sir." Daniel gave her a tired look. "Honest? That's a luxury people can't afford." He turned back to the city skyline, where dark clouds still hung heavy. The truth was, Daniel didn't believe in people anymore. Years ago, he had before the accident. There had been a time when Daniel laughed easily, when life wasn't about contracts and deadlines. He could still picture it if he tried. Emily's smile, soft and full of light, and their little boy, Thomas, giggling on the living room floor as they built wooden trains. That world ended one rainy night. A car crash. A single phone call. Since then, Daniel had locked every door inside himself. He'd buried the memories beneath work, built walls of power and money around his grief until nothing and no one could reach him. He was efficient, feared, alone, and he preferred it that way. Or at least he used to. The morning dragged on. Meetings blurred together, numbers filled the air, and Daniel's temper simmered. By noon, Ellen entered again, holding a steaming cup of coffee. "Sir," she said carefully, "there's a call for you. A woman. She says her daughter found something that belongs to you." Daniel froze mid-step. "What?" she said. "Your wallet." He frowned, suspicious. "Put her through." Ellen transferred the call and stepped out. Daniel picked up the receiver. Daniel Reed speaking. There was a pause, then a nervous voice. "Mr. Reed? I think my daughter found your wallet. It has your business card inside." Daniel's tone hardened instinctively. "And who is this?" "My name's Grace Taylor," she said softly. "My daughter, Lily, found it yesterday near a park bench. We didn't know how to reach you until this morning." Daniel sank into his chair. "You still have it?" "Yes, sir. We didn't touch anything. Everything's there." Her voice trembled slightly, as if she expected him not to believe her. He rubbed his chin. "You didn't take anything out?" "No, sir," Grace said quickly. "We just wanted to return it. My daughter insisted." Daniel's brow furrowed. Most people would have used the money and vanished. Something about this woman's honesty, Or maybe the word daughter tugged at a forgotten place inside him. He cleared his throat. You can bring it to my office tomorrow morning. Ask for me directly. Grace hesitated. Your office? Oh, yes, sir. We'll be there. Thank you. Daniel hung up slowly, still frowning at the phone. He wasn't sure whether to believe her or not. But that night, for the first time in years, he didn't work late. He couldn't stop thinking about that small, trembling voice saying, "My daughter found it." As rain returned to the city that evening, Daniel stood by his apartment window, watching the water blur the lights below. He thought about the wallet, about all that money. If what the woman said was true, she could have disappeared with it, and yet she hadn't. He tried to imagine them, a poor woman, maybe, and a curious little girl. Why bother returning something to a man like him? Daniel sighed, his reflection staring back at him. Sharp suit, hollow eyes. What do you even know about honesty anymore? He muttered under his breath. He turned away and poured himself a drink, but it didn't taste the same. The quiet of the penthouse pressed around him, empty and echoing. He picked up the one framed photograph he still kept on the shelf, Emily and Thomas at the beach. Sand in their hair, sunshine everywhere. The last picture before everything went dark. Maybe someone honest will return it, Ellen had said. Daniel traced the photo's edge with a thumb and whispered bitterly, "There aren't many of those left." But somewhere deep inside, a faint spark of curiosity stirred. What if this time he was wrong? He didn't know that in less than 24 hours, a little girl in hand-me-down shoes would walk into his office, and her simple honesty would shake the walls of his heart more than any tragedy ever could. The next morning was one of those crisp, sunlit days that almost seemed to mock the people rushing through it. Grace clutched her daughter's small hand as they stood in front of the gleaming glass tower that read, "Reed Enterprises." It rose into the clouds like it owned the sky itself. Cars swept past, people in tailored suits hurried through the revolving doors, and Grace suddenly felt small. "Mom," Lily whispered, eyes wide as she looked up. "It's so shiny." Grace smiled nervously. "Yes, sweetheart. Very shiny." In her hand, she held a small brown wallet wrapped neatly in a paper towel, as if it were something sacred. Inside were several cards, some crisp bills, and a silver-edged ID that read Daniel Reed, CEO. Grace took a breath. "Okay, we're just returning something that doesn't belong to us. We'll hand it over and go home, all right?" Lily nodded solemnly. "Like you said, we don't keep what's not ours." Grace's chest tightened at her daughter's words. "That's right, my love." Inside the lobby, marble floors gleamed under chandeliers. Everything smelled of polished wood and coffee. The receptionist, a young woman in a navy blazer, looked up with polite confusion as Grace approached. "Good morning. I have an appointment with Mr. Reed." The receptionist blinked. "Mr. Reed? Do you mean Daniel Reed, the CEO?" Grace nodded timidly. "Yes. He asked us to bring something." The woman checked her screen, clearly skeptical, then picked up the phone. After a quiet exchange, she smiled uncertainly. "You can take the elevator to the top floor. He's expecting you." Grace felt her knees wobble as she guided Lily into the elevator. As the doors closed, Lily whispered, "Mommy, why is everyone staring?" Grace smiled faintly. "Because they're not used to seeing superheroes in pink sneakers." Lily giggled, and the sound eased Grace's nerves for a moment. On the 32nd floor, Daniel's office was a world of its own, sunlight streaming across bookshelves and dark furniture. The hum of the city below was distant, muffled. When Grace and Lily stepped out, Ellen, his assistant, greeted them with a warm smile. "You must be Mrs. Taylor, and you must be the young lady who found Mr. Reed's wallet." Lily nodded proudly. "Yes, ma'am. I found it near the bench by the park." Ellen chuckled softly. "You're very honest. Mr. Reed will be happy to see you." She opened the office door. Daniel stood near the window, tall and composed, his expression unreadable. When he turned, Grace froze. The man was exactly as powerful as his name sounded. Sharp eyes, controlled posture, every movement deliberate. "Mr. Reed," Grace said quickly, "thank you for seeing us. My daughter found your wallet in—" Lily interrupted, holding out the small bundle with both hands. "Here, sir. You dropped this." Daniel blinked. He hadn't expected the child to look so small or so serious. Her shoes were worn, her sweater a little too big. But her eyes, wide, bright, and honest, looked straight at him. He took the wallet carefully. "You found this." "Yes, sir," Lily said, nodding firmly. "Mom said we should give it back. It's yours." Daniel opened it and scanned the contents. Everything was there. Every card, every dollar. Not a single thing missing. He looked up at them. "You didn't take anything?" Grace's cheeks reddened. "No, sir. We don't take what isn't ours." Lily added proudly. "Mom says people who do wrong things feel heavy inside. We like feeling light." Ellen, watching from the door, smiled softly. Daniel's hand froze mid-motion, the little girl's words echoing in his head. Feeling light. He hadn't felt light in years. Daniel cleared his throat and turned his attention back to Grace. "I appreciate your honesty, Mrs. Taylor. Most people wouldn't have bothered." Grace hesitated. "I just wanted to teach my daughter the right thing." Daniel nodded slowly. Then, without thinking, he reached for his checkbook. "You deserve a reward for your honesty." Grace's eyes widened. "Oh no, sir, we can't." But Lily shook her head firmly before her mother could finish. "Mom said we don't take money for doing what's right." Daniel's pen stopped. He looked at the little girl, then at her mother, and then, almost involuntarily, smiled. A real smile, small but genuine. "You're quite a teacher, Mrs. Taylor," he murmured. Grace blushed faintly. "I just try to raise her right, Mr. Reed." Daniel studied them for a long moment. They didn't look like people with much, worn shoes, old coats, but something about them radiated peace, something he couldn't name. "Would you mind telling me where you live?" he asked suddenly. Grace stiffened. "Oh, it's a small place on Ashwood Street. Nothing fancy." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "I see." For a moment, silence filled the office, broken only by the faint ticking of a clock. Then Lily's small voice rose again. "Sir, can I ask something?" Daniel tilted his head. "Of course. Why are you sad?" The question hit like a gentle hammer. Grace gasped softly. "Lily." But Daniel didn't look angry, only surprised. "Why do you think I'm sad?" "Because your eyes look like my mom's did when she missed Daddy," Lily said simply. Empty and quiet. Grace covered her mouth, mortified. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Reed. She doesn't." Daniel raised a hand. "It's all right." He looked down at the little girl who had just cracked something open inside him. No one had dared speak to him that way in years. And yet she was right. For the first time, Daniel couldn't find words to hide behind. After a long pause, he said softly, "You're very observant, Lily." She grinned. "Mom says I notice too much." Daniel smiled again, warmer this time. "It's a gift. Don't lose it." Grace exhaled in relief as he gently shook their hands. "Thank you again," he said quietly. "You've reminded me that there's still goodness in the world." Then, as they turned to leave, Daniel called out, "Mrs. Taylor?" Grace turned. "Yes, sir." He hesitated before saying, "Would you mind if I met Lily again sometime?" Grace blinked, unsure how to respond. But Lily beamed. "We could bring you cookies next time." Daniel chuckled, an unfamiliar sound in his own mouth. "I'd like that." As the mother and daughter left, Ellen entered quietly, watching her boss's expression. "Something wrong, sir?" Daniel stared at the wallet in his hands, and for the first time in years, he felt lighter. "No," he said softly. For once, everything might just be right. The next few days passed in a blur at Reed Enterprises, but Daniel's thoughts kept drifting away from the spreadsheets and boardrooms. Every time he signed a contract or reviewed a deal, he caught himself hearing that tiny voice again. "Mom said we don't take money for doing what's right. Why are you sad?" Those words had stuck like sunlight on the cold walls of his heart. Simple, warm, impossible to ignore. By Friday, Daniel found himself staring out his office window, his reflection faint in the glass. He hardly recognized the man staring back, still powerful, still polished, but something in his face had softened. He turned to Ellen. "Cancel my afternoon meetings." Ellen blinked. "Sir, I said cancel them. I need to take care of something personal." An hour later, Daniel's black sedan rolled down Ashwood Street, far from the manicured avenues of his world. The road was uneven, lined with faded houses, children playing with old bikes, and laundry swaying on lines between balconies. He hadn't been in a place like this since he was young, before the money, before the walls went up. He parked quietly, stepping out in his suit, drawing curious stares. A few neighbors paused mid-conversation. A man like him didn't belong here, not among peeling paint and cracked sidewalks. Then he saw her, Grace Taylor, standing by a small corner shop, holding 2 grocery bags. Her hair was tied back, her clothes simple but neat. Beside her, Lily was crouched, petting a stray cat and giggling. For a moment, Daniel just watched them. The sight, so ordinary, so human, made his chest ache in a way he hadn't felt in years. He walked forward, and Grace looked up, startled. "Mr. Reed?" she gasped, nearly dropping her groceries. "Oh my goodness! What are you doing here?" Daniel offered a faint smile. "I was in the area. Thought I'd check on my wallet's hero." Lily's head popped up. "Mr. Reed!" she shouted excitedly, running toward him. "You came." Daniel bent slightly to her level. "I told you I'd like to see you again, didn't I?" Lily grinned, ear to ear. "We made cookies. Mom said we should save some for the nice man." Grace blushed. "They're not fancy, sir. Just chocolate chip." Daniel chuckled. "Chocolate chip sounds perfect." They invited him upstairs to their tiny apartment. 2 rooms, 1 kitchen, 1 balcony barely big enough for a chair and a row of plants. The walls were clean but worn, the curtains faded from sunlight. Lily proudly presented a plate of unevenly shaped cookies on the table. "Ta-da," she announced. Daniel smiled, taking one. It was a little burnt on the edges, but somehow it tasted better than anything he'd had in years. "Delicious," he said sincerely. "Best I've had in a long time." Lily beamed. "Told you, Mom." Grace laughed, shaking her head. "She takes compliments too seriously." As they chatted, Daniel looked around. The small bookshelf with children's stories, a drawing pinned to the fridge that said "Me and Mommy" under the rainbow, the hand-stitched curtains. It wasn't luxury, but it was home, and that realization made his chest tighten again. Later, as Grace washed the dishes, Daniel stood by the window, watching Lily feed crumbs to the cat outside. "She's a good kid," he said quietly. Grace smiled softly. "She's my everything. We don't have much, but I want her to grow up knowing right from wrong. My mother used to say, 'Richness isn't in your pockets, it's in your heart.'" Daniel turned to her, something shifting in his eyes. "Your mother was wise." Grace chuckled faintly. "Maybe, but wisdom doesn't pay rent." There was no bitterness in her tone, only quiet acceptance. Daniel hesitated, then asked gently, "What do you do, Mrs. Taylor?" "I'm a seamstress," she replied. "Mostly repairs and small custom jobs. Sometimes the neighbors bring me work, sometimes not. It's enough for now." He nodded, thoughtful. "You make ends meet. That's more than most people can say." Grace shrugged. "We try. I just don't want Lily growing up thinking we're poor in spirit. Money comes and goes, but character," she glanced toward her daughter, "that's what lasts." Her words hit him harder than she could imagine. He'd spent years building wealth, empires of numbers, contracts, glass towers. But sitting in this modest room, surrounded by love and laughter, he suddenly realized how poor his soul had become. Before leaving, Daniel took a quiet walk through the neighborhood. Children ran barefoot past him, women waved from balconies, and an old man sold roasted corn by the roadside. The air smelled like smoke and sugar. For the first time in forever, Daniel didn't feel out of place. A little boy ran by and accidentally bumped into him, dropping his ice cream. Daniel quickly crouched down. "Hey, no harm done." He bought the boy another from the nearby cart. The boy's grin mirrored Lily's, bright, unguarded, grateful. And in that moment, something cracked wide open in Daniel's chest. He realized that kindness wasn't weakness. It was strength, quiet, unshakable, pure. When he returned to his car, Grace and Lily were waving from the balcony. "Goodbye, Mr. Reed," Lily called. "Come again." He smiled, raising a hand. "I will." As he drove away, the city around him no longer looked the same. The skyscrapers felt emptier now, hollow symbols of everything he'd chased. He thought about Grace's tiny apartment filled with laughter, about the cookies that crumbled in his hand, about Lily's clear, honest eyes. And for the first time in years, Daniel Reed felt human again. That night, In his penthouse, he didn't open his laptop or pour a drink. He sat by the window with the city lights below and whispered to the empty room. "Mom taught me not to keep what isn't mine." Lily's voice echoed in his memory, and Daniel realized maybe all his success, his wealth, his pride, none of it was really his to keep. Not if he couldn't share it. That was the night he made a quiet promise to himself and to a little girl who'd reminded him what honesty truly meant. He would make things right. 2 days passed since Daniel's visit to Ashwood Street, but the warmth of that tiny apartment still lingered in his chest. Every sound in his office, the tapping keyboards, the hum of conversation, the ring of phones, felt different now. Quieter, colder. He realized that the life he'd built was efficient, yes, but empty. And he couldn't shake Lily's voice from his mind. "Mom says people who do wrong things feel heavy inside. We like feeling light." He wanted to feel light again. That morning, Daniel sat at his desk with a cup of untouched coffee, staring at a blank page on his notepad. He wasn't thinking about profits or deals. He was thinking about a little girl who returned a wallet worth more than her mother earned a month. He pressed his pen to paper and wrote a single word: give. Later that afternoon, Ellen entered his office carrying a stack of folders. "Sir, the quarterly report." "Not now," Daniel interrupted gently. "I need you to do something else." Ellen blinked. "Of course, sir." He leaned forward. "There's a woman named Grace Taylor. She lives on Ashwood Street, apartment 4B. I want you to find out what she does for a living. Everything you can about her work, her situation, her rent, her daughter's school." Ellen hesitated. "If I may ask, sir, why?" Daniel gave a faint smile. "Because sometimes good people deserve a break, and the world rarely gives it to them." By the next morning, a detailed report lay on his desk. Grace's life was all there in black and white. Part-time seamstress, income below the poverty line, rent overdue by 2 weeks, and a daughter enrolled in a public elementary school known for overcrowded classrooms. Daniel read each line carefully. Every sentence seemed heavier than the last. "Her landlord has issued a final warning," Ellen said softly. "They might have to move if she can't pay by the end of the month." Daniel's jaw tightened. Not happening. He leaned back, lost in thought. For once, the solution didn't involve a contract or a lawyer. It involved heart. That afternoon, Daniel made a call to the HR department of Reed Enterprises. "Give me a position open in our community outreach division," he said. "Something flexible, administrative, or creative." "Yes, Mr. Reed. Should we start interviewing?" "No need," he replied. "I already have someone in mind." The next morning, Grace nearly dropped her sewing needle when the phone rang. "Hello," she answered cautiously. "Mrs. Taylor," a woman's calm voice replied. "This is Ellen, Mr. Reed's assistant from Reed Enterprises." Grace froze. "Oh, yes. Good morning, Ms. Ellen. I'm calling because Mr. Reed was impressed by your honesty and values. He'd like to offer you a position at our company, part-time to start, with full benefits and flexible hours." Grace nearly dropped the phone. I think there's been a mistake. I don't have an office background. I sew clothes." Ellen smiled through the phone. "He knows that. He wants someone in the community outreach department who understands what people really need, not just on paper, but in life." Grace sat down slowly. "He really said that?" "Yes, ma'am. He also mentioned child care support and transportation coverage." Grace's throat tightened. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll come in tomorrow to meet him," Ellen replied kindly. The next morning, Grace and Lily once again entered the shining lobby of Reed Enterprises. But this time, Grace wore a new blouse she had sewn herself. It wasn't fancy, but it fit perfectly, and she walked with her head a little higher. When the elevator doors opened, Daniel was already waiting. "Mrs. Taylor," he greeted warmly. "And Miss Lily, my favorite cookie chef." Lily giggled. "We made banana ones this time." Daniel chuckled, motioning them inside his office. Grace hesitated. "Mr. Reed, this job, I don't know if I'm really qualified. I've never worked in a big place like this." Daniel shook his head. "Qualifications can be taught, but integrity? That's rare. You already have what this company needs most." Grace blinked. "Integrity. Yes," Daniel said simply. "Reed Enterprises has a lot of smart people, but not enough good ones. I want you to help change that." Her eyes filled with tears, she tried to blink away. Mr. Reed, I don't know how to thank you. Just keep being you, he said gently. That's thanks enough. As they talked, Lily wandered toward the window, gazing at the skyline. Mom, look, you can see the park from here, she exclaimed. Daniel smiled at the sight. There was something almost symbolic about it. The very park where honesty began this story was visible from where their new life might start. He turned to Grace. There's something else I'd like to do. I know your landlord has been difficult. I own several residential properties in the city. I can arrange a new apartment for you. Affordable, safe, close to Lily's school. Grace's eyes widened. Sir, that's too much. He raised a hand. Please, let me do this. You returned something that wasn't yours. Now I'm just returning the kindness that was always missing in my world. For a moment, silence filled the room. Grace's lips trembled as she whispered, You're a good man, Mr. Reed. Daniel's gaze softened. I wasn't for a long time, but your daughter reminded me how to be one. At that, Grace could no longer hold back her tears. She hugged Lily tightly, and even Daniel, who usually hated displays of emotion, found himself blinking hard. When they left, Ellen entered the office quietly. Sir, she said softly, you've done something wonderful today. Daniel leaned against the window, watching Grace and Lily walk down the street below, hand in hand. He smiled faintly. No, Ellen, they did something wonderful. I just finally noticed. And as sunlight broke through the clouds outside, Daniel Reed, the man once defined by power and precision, realized that real wealth wasn't what he had gained, but what he had given. The news of Grace Taylor's unexpected hiring spread through Reed Enterprises faster than morning coffee. Did you hear? Mr. Reed hired a seamstress. Apparently, she's never even worked in office. Why would the CEO do that? Whispers floated from cubicle to cubicle, but Daniel didn't care. For the first time in years, the chatter didn't irritate him. It amused him. Because for once, his decision wasn't about image or strategy. It was about heart. Grace started her first day the following Monday. Dressed in a simple cream blouse and a skirt she had carefully ironed, she walked into the building with trembling hands but a determined smile. Ellen met her in the lobby. Welcome to Reed Enterprises, Mrs. Taylor. Mr. Reed is expecting you. Grace nodded, clutching her small purse tightly. I still can't believe I'm here. Ellen smiled kindly. You earned this, Grace. Don't forget that. Inside his office, Daniel was reviewing reports when Grace entered. He looked up, his usual commanding tone replaced with warmth. Mrs. Taylor, he greeted. Ready for your first day? As ready as I'll ever be, she said nervously. He stood and extended a folder. You'll be working with our community outreach team. I want you to review how we support local families. If something doesn't make sense or feel right, tell me. You have a better sense of people than most of us here. Grace blinked. You want my opinion? Daniel smiled. Yes, that's exactly why you're here. Over the next few weeks, Grace's presence began to transform the office in quiet, unexpected ways. She brought warmth where there had been walls. She learned everyone's names, from the janitor to the executives, and greeted them with genuine kindness. When the coffee machine broke, she fixed it herself. When interns spilled tea on her report, Grace helped her rewrite it instead of scolding her. When Ellen worked late, Grace stayed too, saying no one should sit alone in silence. Word spread fast. The new woman in outreach was different. Even Daniel noticed a shift. Meetings grew less tense. People smiled more. The office felt alive. One day, during a team lunch, Daniel overheard two managers whispering. Mr. Reed seems lighter lately. Yeah, I haven't seen him smile like that in years. Daniel pretended not to hear, but inside, he knew why. It was because of a little girl's words that still echoed in his mind. Mom says people who do wrong things feel heavy inside. We like feeling light. One Friday afternoon, Daniel stopped by the outreach floor unannounced. Grace looked up in surprise as he approached her desk, where Lily's drawing of Mr. Reed eating cookies was pinned proudly on the wall. I like your new decor, Daniel said, amused. Grace laughed, blushing. Lily insisted you needed more color in your life. Daniel chuckled. She's not wrong. Then he glanced at the project board beside her. Grace had created something new, the Light Hearts Initiative. What's this? He asked, intrigued. Grace hesitated. An idea. What if we started a community program to support families like ours? People who work hard but just need a chance. I thought, maybe we could provide sewing machines, small grants, or training. Real help, not charity. Daniel studied the board, covered in handwritten notes, sketches, and photos of local families. It wasn't polished or corporate, but it was real. I love it, he said simply. Let's make it happen. Grace blinked in disbelief. You mean it? I do, Daniel said. Let's start with 10 families. You'll lead the project. Grace clasped a hand over her mouth, eyes welling up. Thank you, Mr. Reed. You don't know what this means. Daniel smiled softly. I think I do. That weekend, the Light Hearts Initiative launched. Grace visited the neighborhoods, personally meeting families, listening to their struggles. Daniel joined her quietly, wearing a plain shirt and jeans. No suit, no tie, just another volunteer. The first day, they distributed sewing kits and food parcels. A single mother hugged Grace, whispering, "You understand us." No one ever does. And Daniel, standing a few steps away, felt something stir deep inside him. It was the same feeling he used to get when Emily smiled at him. The same light that once filled their home. Only now, it came from helping others smile. One evening, back at the office, Ellen entered Daniel's room with a curious expression. Sir, the outreach volunteers wanted to thank you. Apparently, you paid out of pocket for half the program's expenses. Daniel shrugged. It's not charity, Ellen. It's investment in people. Ellen smiled knowingly. You sound different these days. He raised an eyebrow. Different. Human, she said simply. Daniel laughed quietly. Maybe I finally remembered how. A few days later, Lily visited the office again. She ran straight to Daniel's desk, waving a new drawing. It's you, me, and Mommy, she declared proudly. Daniel took the paper, 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright sun. I look much happier this time, he teased. Lily nodded. That's because you are. He smiled, touched. You know what, Lily? I think you might be right. Grace stood by the door, watching the two of them with quiet gratitude. She still couldn't believe that her daughter's small act of honesty had brought them here, had changed him. And in a rare, unguarded moment, Daniel looked at both of them and thought, maybe this is what family feels like. That night, Daniel walked through the office long after everyone had gone. The lights were dim, the city glittered below, and the air was calm. He paused by Grace's empty desk, where a note from Lily still lay. Thank you for smiling again. Daniel smiled softly. The ripple had begun with one small act of honesty, a child returning a wallet, but it had spread, touching hearts, changing lives, transforming a company that had forgotten what kindness felt like. And as he turned off the lights, Daniel whispered, let's keep this ripple going. The sun dipped behind the skyline of New York City, painting Reed Enterprises in golden light. Most employees had gone home, but one office still glowed. Daniel Reed sat behind his desk, staring at a photo frame he hadn't touched in years. A smiling woman holding a newborn baby. His late wife, Emily, and their daughter, Sophie. The memories flooded back, uninvited yet familiar. The laughter, the tiny socks, the hospital room, then the silence that followed, the kind that hollows out a man from the inside. He rubbed his forehead. It had been almost 7 years, but tonight, the ache returned as sharp as ever. A soft knock pulled him back to the present. Mr. Reed? It's Grace. He looked up, startled. Grace? You're still here. She stepped inside, holding 2 paper cups. I noticed your light was still on. Thought you might need this. He smiled faintly. Coffee. Chamomile tea, she corrected. Too much coffee this late makes you restless. Or so I've been told. Daniel chuckled softly. You sound like my mother. Grace took a seat across from him. Then your mother must have been a wise woman. He hesitated, then said quietly, she was. For a moment, silence filled the room, the kind that wasn't uncomfortable but gentle. Grace's presence had that effect on people. She didn't rush moments, she let them breathe. Her eyes wandered to the framed photo on the desk. Is that your wife? Daniel froze. He rarely talked about Emily. No one dared to ask until now. He nodded slowly. Emily. She passed away 6 years ago. Grace's expression softened. I'm so sorry. He looked down at his tea, his voice low. We lost her during childbirth. Our daughter didn't make it either. Grace's breath caught. Oh, Daniel. He swallowed hard. I stopped believing in kindness after that. I built this company higher and higher because I thought success could fill the emptiness. But the truth is, he paused, his throat tightening. The higher you build your walls, the lonelier it gets inside them. Grace didn't speak. She simply reached across the desk, placing her hand gently over his. It wasn't pity, it was understanding. I can't imagine how much that hurt, she said softly. But you didn't lose the ability to be kind. You just buried it under the pain. Daniel looked at her, the words sinking deeper than he expected. After a long silence, he managed a small smile. When I saw Lily hiding in the kitchen that night, something in me shifted. For the first time in years, I wanted to do the right thing. Not because it made sense, but because it felt right. Grace smiled gently. That's the part of you your wife would have loved most. He looked away, blinking rapidly. Emily used to say something similar. She believed small acts of goodness could change the world. Grace leaned forward. Then maybe she was right. Because that small act, finding your wallet, changed ours. Daniel laughed softly through his tears. Maybe it changed mine, too. They talked for hours, not as boss and employee, but as two people who had both lost something and somehow found a reason to keep going. Grace told him about her late husband, Tom, a kind man who worked double shifts until an accident took him too soon. How she had struggled to raise Lily alone, cleaning houses while praying her daughter would never see her mother break. Daniel listened quietly, feeling a bond form, not of romance, but of shared survival. By the time Grace stood to leave, the clock showed 11:40 p.m. I should let you rest, she said softly. He nodded. Grace! She turned back. Thank you for listening. She smiled warmly. Thank you for trusting me. As the door closed behind her, Daniel exhaled deeply. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a ghost trapped in his own success. That night, he went home, took Emily's photo off the shelf, and whispered, I think you'd have liked Grace and Lily. He smiled faintly, imagining Emily's soft laugh. Then, for the first time in a long while, he slept peacefully. The next morning, Daniel arrived early at the office. He called Ellen in. Ellen, I want to expand the Light Hearts Initiative, he said decisively. We'll include educational scholarships for single parents and housing support for employees who've fallen on hard times. Ellen blinked. Sir, that's incredible. Daniel smiled. Let's call it Sophie's Fund, in memory of my daughter. Ellen's voice softened. That's beautiful, Mr. Reed. It's the least I can do, he said. Maybe her short life can still make a difference. When Grace arrived that morning, Daniel greeted her with something no one at the company had ever seen before, a genuine smile. Grace, he said, I'd like you to lead a new project. It's called Sophie's Fund. It's meant to help parents who are struggling, the way you once did. Grace's eyes shimmered. Daniel, I don't know what to say. He looked at her warmly. Then just say yes. By afternoon, the entire company was buzzing again. But this time, the whispers carried something new. Mr. Reed's launching another charity project. Can you believe it's named after his daughter? He's really changed, hasn't he? And perhaps he had. Because while Daniel Reed once measured life in profits, now he measured it in hearts helped, lives changed, and smiles restored. That evening, when Grace told Lily about the new project, the little girl squealed with joy. Mr. Reed is helping people like us? She asked. Grace nodded proudly. Yes, sweetheart. Because of you. Lily thought for a moment, then said seriously, then we should help too. Grace laughed, hugging her. We will, my love. We already are. Meanwhile, Daniel stood by his penthouse window, watching the city lights flicker below. He wasn't thinking about profit margins or market trends. He was thinking about Grace, about Lily's laughter, about Emily's memory, and how a small act of kindness had set off a ripple big enough to heal them all. He whispered into the night, maybe loss isn't the end after all. Maybe it's where love begins again. A month later, the grand ballroom of the Reed Enterprises Charity Gala sparkled like a dream. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in golden light, and rows of elegantly dressed guests mingled around tables draped in white silk. The banners read, Sophie's Fund, a light for families in need. But beneath all the luxury and polish, the evening's spirit was simple, kindness reborn. At the center of the stage stood Daniel Reed, not in his usual cold, commanding demeanor, but as a man humbled by life. "Good evening," he began, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "Many of you know me as a businessman, a man who built his life on discipline, control, and success. But tonight I stand before you as something else, a man who was changed by a little girl's honesty." The room grew quiet. Cameras pointed at him. He took a slow breath. "I lost my wife and daughter years ago. For a long time, I stopped believing in people and goodness. Then, one day, a poor child found my wallet and returned it without taking a single thing. Her words still echo in my heart. Mom taught me not to keep what isn't mine." A few guests dabbed at their eyes. Daniel smiled softly. "That act reminded me that integrity isn't taught by wealth or power. It's taught by love. And that love changes lives." He turned toward the side of the stage. "Grace, Lily, would you please join me?" Grace hesitated for a moment, dressed in a simple blue gown that looked far more elegant than anything she'd ever worn. Little Lily, in a white dress with a yellow ribbon, clutched her mother's hand as they stepped forward. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Daniel bent slightly to Lily's height, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "This," he said, smiling, "is the little girl who reminded me that honesty still exists. And this is her mother, the woman who showed me that compassion never goes unnoticed." The audience erupted into applause. Lily blushed and hid behind her mother's dress. Grace's eyes glistened with quiet pride. When the clapping faded, Daniel continued, "Sophie's Fund was born because of them. Tonight, we've already raised enough to sponsor 50 families for housing, education, and medical support." The applause swelled again, but this time it wasn't just polite. It was heartfelt. Grace wiped a tear, whispering, "You've done something beautiful, Daniel." He looked at her warmly. "We did." After the speeches, music filled the hall. People chatted and laughed, the air alive with something Daniel hadn't felt in years: hope. Grace stood near the dessert table, holding a small plate of chocolate cake, while Lily excitedly told another child how she helped Mr. Daniel make a fund for people. Daniel approached quietly. "She's quite the little spokesperson." Grace laughed softly. "She's proud of you." He glanced down at Lily, smiling. "I'm proud of her. The city looks lighter somehow." Grace leaned on the railing. "Maybe it's not the city that changed." Daniel glanced at her, then smiled. "Maybe not." They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the stars shimmer faintly above the towers. Suddenly, small footsteps pattered behind them. "Mr. Daniel," Lily called, running toward him with something in her hands. He turned, kneeling down. "Hey, kiddo, what's that?" Lily held out a small folded paper. "I made this for you." He unfolded it carefully. It was a childish drawing, a big tall man, a woman, and a little girl holding hands beneath a shining sun. At the top, written in uneven letters, were the words, "Family." Daniel's throat tightened. "This is beautiful, Lily." She grinned. "Mom says families are the people who make your heart happy." "You make mine happy, Mr. Daniel." Tears welled in his eyes before he could stop them. He pulled her into a hug, voice breaking. "You make mine happy too, sweetheart." Grace watched quietly, her own eyes misting. For the first time in years, Daniel Reed, the man known as the untouchable CEO, cried openly, not from loss, but from love rediscovered. As the music swelled behind them, the three of them stood there together, a picture of what kindness could rebuild. One act of honesty, one second chance, one found family. Daniel looked at the stars and whispered softly to himself, "Emily, we're okay now." Epilogue. Weeks later, a news article went viral. CEO Daniel Reed launches Sophie's Fund to help single parents, inspired by a poor girl's honesty. The photo beneath showed Grace, Lily, and Daniel cutting a ribbon together, smiling under a banner that read, "Hope starts here." Comments flooded social media. "This story restored my faith in humanity. That little girl is an angel. More CEOs should have hearts like Daniel Reed." But the most meaningful comment came from Lily's own drawing, now framed in Daniel's office. The one word that said it all: family. If this story touched your heart, remember, one honest act can change more lives than a fortune ever could. Sparkling Heart. Don't forget to like, share, and spread kindness.